Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Victoria Wishner, and I am the co-founder of Five. And since you guys are all here, probably you have an idea of who Five is, but I just wanted to give a little bit of an intro. So Five stands for 5-MeO-DMT Information and Vital Education. And we are a centralized education hub on 5-MeO-DMT. You know, anybody who's looking to learn about 5-MeO, whether it's somebody who's just curious, maybe they're a first-time seeker, maybe they want to sit with the medicine, maybe they're an avid psychonaut, or maybe they're even facilitators. Basically, our platform is designed on giving anybody interested in 5-MeO-DMT the necessary tools to safely and responsibly approach working with 5-MeO-DMT. So we offer things like webinars, trainings, and a whole bunch of other information. So if you're curious about learning more about Five, head over to our website, which is FIVE-MEO.education. And so, yeah, thank you all so much for being here. Today, we're going to be talking about healing identity-based trauma with 5-MeO-DMT. We have an incredible panel here with us, but I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan Quest Brown. And Jonathan Quest Brown is a conscious, creative, sacred medicine practitioner and integration coach. Following the passing of his mother in 2018, he turned to yoga and sacred medicine for healing, becoming a certified yoga teacher and Reiki master. Today, Quest acts as a conduit combining ancient practices and Indigenous technologies with modern tools to share his unique blend of creativity and wellness. Thank you all so much for being here, and I'll pass it over to you, Quest.
Thank you, Victoria. Really appreciate you just with all the work that you do. So thanks again for giving us this platform to get started today. Awesome. Well, I want to welcome everybody for joining us. Really appreciate you all taking about an hour and a half out of your day to share this sacred moment with me and my good friends. Again, my name is Quest. I want to say welcome. And during this hour, we're going to be talking about healing identity-based trauma with the assistance of the sacred medicine 5-MeO-DMT. Okay, this messages and the knowledge that we're going to be sharing during this time is really to help educate the BIPOC community that is worldwide. That's why we're here together as community, as a unit, and we're just going to dive into some really vital information. What I would like you all to do, if you're able, possibly turn your phones on Do Not Disturb, put them on focus mode, so you can just really tune in with us for this hour. And I want to go into introducing the rest of the panel. We're going to go ahead and start with good friend Joel. He is the co-founder of 5-MeO Education, 10 retreats, and so on. So Joel, I'll let you go ahead and take that over. Then we'll go to Butterfly and Charlotte as well.
Hey, everybody. My name is Joel Briere, and I am the founder of Kaivalya Collective, which is a multifaceted psychedelic wellness company. And in the Kaivalya family, we have our retreat arm, which is Tandava Retreats, focused on safe and effective 5-MeO-DMT retreats here in Tepoztlan, Mexico. And then we also have Five, as Victoria spoke about, 5-MeO-DMT Information and Vital Education. And then I'm also board president and co-founder of our local nonprofit partnership, Quetzali, which is geared around supporting Indigenous infrastructure within Mexico and to be spread around.
Great. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate that. Butterfly, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Butterfly. In the US, I am a sitter for different private clients that want to be with sacred ceremony. And in addition to that, I'm honored and pleased to get to collaborate with Joel and Victoria as one of the instructors on the Five Education platform, as an integration specialist with Kaivalya and Tandava retreats, and also someone who gets to facilitate and help to share and hold space with them down in Mexico. And that is just a quick intro. I also wanted to bring in some agreements about how we'd like to engage with each other in this space. And so first, we are going to, I know this session is going to be recorded, but just use your discretion when it comes to what you choose to share. This, on social media, sometimes it can be a lot of like performing, right? And we're really here to try to get into education and growth and healing. Let's keep in mind that we're all teachers and we're all students. Like, it's such a wonderful opportunity to be in this dialogue, but we want to learn from you. We all have a lot to learn from each other. And of course, like any reality, there's no such thing as an inherently safe space, but we do hope this will be a braver space in which we can have transparent, direct, authentic conversations. And we're going to do our best to speak from our own experience, not speak on behalf of any entire group or population, and to root in the self and the I statements. And so hope that will be in service of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Butterfly. Really, really appreciate that. And next, I would love to go to my good friend, Charlotte. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Charlotte Dewar-James. I'm the founder of the Psychedelic Liberation Training. It's a training program for aspiring and current psychedelic therapists and practitioners who are committed to decolonizing their process and their practice, and really committing to becoming stewards of collective liberation. I also support folks in my community. I'm here on Piscataway land in Baltimore, Maryland. And today I would love to offer just a short grounding to bring us into the space, to bring us into presence, to call our ancestors in to guide this conversation for us. And from there, we'll really jump into the conversation around what 5-MeO DMT is and how we are able to work with this medicine to support all of ourselves in returning to wholeness. So if you are in a place where you feel safe and you feel comfortable closing your eyes, I would invite you to just take a moment to close your eyes, to bow your head in just a bit of humility to the mystery. And if it's available to you, to take a deep inhale through your nose. Give yourself a moment in the pause to feel supported by the surface beneath you, and exhale as you're ready through your mouth. Just honoring yourself, giving yourself that moment to arrive after a long, hopefully exciting day. And I just begin by calling in our ancestors, our spirit guides, our allies, our relatives, and our source energy. Asking for them to accompany us in this conversation, to help us to guide our words with our hearts, helping us to honor this beautiful sacrament, this beautiful medicine, and all of the knowledge and insight and healing that it brings into our lives and into our world. Taking a moment to honor yourself and each person who has arrived here, the divinity that they hold, the sacredness of their healing journey. Call on the guardians of the four directions, the east, the west, the north, and the south. Ask them to create a circle of protection and love around us. And I call in Mother Earth and Father Sky in deep gratitude for all that they provide, and ask that these ancient, wise spirits remind us never to take more than we need from this place, and always to give back more than we take, in service to the earth and in service to the many generations that are to come after us, and to all those that came before us. Ashe. Aho, and Basi.
Gosh, hey,
Thank you
oh,
all.
thank you. I really, really needed that. So I'm hoping everybody feels really good after that beautiful grounding practice. So yes, again, I would love to let people know we welcome questions throughout. So please, if you want to just go ahead and toss them in the chat, we will have a section at the end where we'll be able to dive into the Q&A. So please, if you have questions while we're having this discussion, this conversation, just go ahead and toss them in the chat and we will get to all of that. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into it since we want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I would love to start with you, Joelle, right? I know for me, coming into encountering, spending time with this sacred medicine, I didn't fully understand it. So not wanting to make any assumptions about people's experience level, would you mind giving a brief description of 5-MeO DMT, and then maybe even dive into the difference between that and Bufo, because that's something I had to learn along my journey. And something that I hear along from other people that I conversate with, that they assume they're both the same. So I would love to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Quest. So 5-MeO DMT, also known as the crown jewel of the entheogenic kingdom, also known as the God molecule. What allows 5-MeO DMT to stand out from all other psychedelics and really be in its own realm is its ability for the individual to undergo a dissolution of sense of individual self completely. And now the term ego death gets tossed around a whole lot, but very few people understand the implications involved in an actual dissolution of sense of self. So as many psychedelics do affect the default mode network and allow some dampening to the sense of individual self, with 5-MeO, we may experience a complete dissolution. And so that is the full fall away of our subject-object relationship, where there is a sense of me that is experiencing something. Say with ayahuasca, I go on a journey. I take a substance and I go on a journey and I experience this, I witness this, I come in contact with this entity, I come in contact with this type of healing. With 5-MeO, that sense of I falls away, dissolves away. So it is less me going somewhere and more a falling away and dissolving of every layer that allows me to think and believe that I am separate from everything else. So 5-MeO DMT can be compared to that classic mystical experience, that full kind of peak mystical experience. And sorry, I may have frozen. Can you guys hear me okay? Oh, sweet. The Wi-Fi is completely out.
Did he freeze for everyone else?
Sorry about that, guys. Our Wi-Fi just paused.
Uh-oh.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back. Okay.
Sorry about that, family. Sometimes the electricity likes to blink on and off down here in Mexico. So I'm not sure where
back. All right,
Quest,
cool.
where'd you Quest, where'd you lose me at?
You pretty much greatly described 5-MeO DMT and what it is like. So I would love if you could dive into really quickly, Bufo and clarify that if you don't mind.
So first clarification is 5-MeO DMT is not DMT. The two are very, very different, though chemically similar, but not to be confused. DMT is the active ingredient in ayahuasca. 5-MeO DMT is a completely different beast and is also the active alkaloid in the secretion of the Bufo alvarius toad found in the Sonoran Desert. Bufo became very, very popular in the mid-2000s. And Bufo, the active ingredient, is 5-MeO. It contains anywhere between 10 and 30% 5-MeO. But they do not carry the same risk profile, though experientially they are the same. The experience of the two are the same. However, Bufo does carry a higher risk profile as there are cardiotoxic elements to the other alkaloids present in the secretion, as well as the unknown dosage specificity. So that can make things a little difficult because you never know truly how much you're giving someone. And I may give someone, a pipe that's 25 milligrams of toad, and that may be what we call a hug dose, a nice light kind of medium dose, but it may be a higher concentration in that sample. And so that might result in what we call a full release or a full kind of knockout dose. And if a participant is not prepared and the setting is not geared to hold that type of experience, that could result in even a traumatic experience. And so in safety profiles, 5-MeO in its pure form is going to be far safer. And then there's the ethical concern with BUFO, as it is extracted from a living being, and its defense mechanisms which are being taken away. And so it's gotten into a bit of a situation to where the toads in the desert have faced, they're not facing immediate extinction, but the population has been greatly affected. They are being negatively affected in a lot of ways, both due to modernization and popularization of this molecule. And so in efforts to mitigate and kind of nip in the bud the natural extractive mentality of humanity, we do promote use of the pure molecule or synthetic over toad, as it is, as it allows us to not just take from the environment to get an experience, that we can have the same in a different way.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. That's like super, super important information, and something that I also had to learn along my journey. So thanks again. Something that you had said, which I think can lead into the next question that I would love to hand off to Charlotte, when you talked about modernization, right? Charlotte, I would love to get your thoughts around how the psychedelic space right now, the current state that it's in, and the spiritual bypassing that can and does happen, right? Can you share your thoughts around how the current landscape is erasing Indigenous culture?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, with 5-MeO, we see with this dissolution that there's also this ability to access a space in which we are all one. And this is a term that's sort of thrown around, or a phrase that's thrown around frequently in psychedelic spaces, in communities of consciousness, this idea that, race doesn't matter, gender identity doesn't matter, sexuality doesn't matter, right? Because when we get to the 5D, when we're past this place, when we're past our human experience, we are all just source energy. And while that is one of the really beautiful gifts that working with 5 may give us, it also is a denial of the truth and the systems and the structures that we exist in when we are inhabiting our human bodies and we are inhabiting the 3D. And when we look at a lot of Indigenous earth-based traditions, there is this focus on descending, right? That spirit is in the material. It is here in the earth. It is here in our human experience. And what we see with some folks in this psychedelic resurgence is this desire to escape the human experience or to transcend, right? And 5-MeO is very much a transcendent medicine. When you're having that full release, you are transcending, you are moving past what it is to exist in this dualistic state in which we exist. And so, whether you're working with a sacrament that is been long held within an Indigenous tradition, or you're working with a synthetic molecule, it's important to not, as you said, erase all of the knowledge that we've gained over centuries from communities that do work with entheogenic medicines and sacraments within an Indigenous context. And even when we talk about things in the clinical model of working with your inner teacher and your inner knowing, these are all concepts that come from shamanism, which come from Indigenous communities. And in the case of BUFO, there are some Indigenous communities in northern Mexico where this toad exists, that have a relationship with the medicine, and there are conversations that we could have about reciprocity with those communities. But I think, specifically with 5, something that I see time and time again is this people having access to a transcendent experience and then equating that to reality. And for me, it's more so 5 and source energy showing us a possibility of truth, something to move towards, but something that we need to work actively to manifest in our world.
I think that's a really, really important point.
You're muted, Quest.
Yep, I'm muted. Okay, yeah, I was saying, I swear, every time you share a bit of knowledge, it's just like so powerful and so profound. So I want to thank you for diving into that. And you know, something that I also see a lot, like people forget the roots of the medicine, the roots of the indigenous cultures that have been doing this stuff for thousands of years, right? And then especially just being at the psychedelic science conference, right? You see how crazy the landscape is and how, you know, people are just commodifying this stuff, right? And it's just, it's really, really harmful. And it can be harmful for the people that are seeking help too. So
Yeah. Could I just add just super briefly to that, that
please.
also it's not just that there are traditions and communities that have carried this medicine, but they've carried it at like very high risk of state violence. And so it's like not just, oh, these like cool communities and cultures that have been doing these practices for a long time. They've been doing it, and they've also had to come up with immensely creative ways to protect the medicine and allow us to have the privilege to even be in contact with it now.
Yeah, amen to that. Thank you. Thank you. I would love to go into something that you had mentioned, you know, talking about how 5 is, you know, it's sacred earth medicine, but also source, right? And how it ties back into what we're here to talk about today, how this powerful, powerful medicine sacred medicine can help us with healing the identity-based trauma that we all have, because again, we're all human, right? We're human at the end of the day. We know we're spiritual beings, we're still human, we still get these constructs and things that are tossed onto us as, you know, before birth, right? And then all of this stuff that we're just peeling away. So I would love to go to Butterfly next. If you can talk about how can 5 specifically help to heal identity-based trauma?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I really appreciate the wisdom my spiritual siblings are bringing in, because it's all a continuous flow here. For me, as I'm not going to sit with someone unless I feel and know that there is integrity being held in the space. And that is so foundational to the potentiality of healing, and specifically within the context of identity-based trauma. So if somebody is still in a colonial mindset, this mindset of I extract something and now I get to use it, and then that, you know, I don't have to do any work, that's incredibly problematic on many levels. One, because it's not effective, but two, because there may be a lack of consciousness of the harm that is being perpetuated. I identify as BIPOC, I identify as queer, so there's intergenerational trauma. And somebody coming into a space and offering a medicine in a way without the ethics and without the integrity is only going to most likely cause even more harm than healing. Now, when there is integrity, when there is alignment, when there is experience and connection to source, which takes a lot of willingness to do the work of self-awareness, to actually peel away the conditioning of like, oh, who are we supposed to be? And then you show up as, yeah, this is my best effort of my truth. That's where the opportunity for this healing can happen, because it's like, yes, I'm with you in the suffering. I know what it is to live in a construct that actively seeks to cause me harm based on the physical body that I'm in. And I am not willing to allow myself to be defined or subject to that false narrative, right? And how to hold the complexity of that, the non-duality of that. And I think having the somatic embodied experience of connection to source is certainly an opening. Like Charlotte said, it shows you the possibility. And then essential is being able to, whether it's the facilitator or a larger integration support team, and with different tools, being able to work with individuals to be like, all right, well, now we know it's possible. Let's see what's impeding the way to actually living into that. And I'll there's more to say, but I'll pause there for now.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's great, because I was actually going to ask you a follow-up question, if you don't mind. Like, you mentioned that, people can bypass and ignore the reality of things, which can create a lot of harm for, again, people seeking medicine. And then you also have facilitators, right, that have this access to this medicine and a holding space for folks, right? So I would love to hear, like, what is your response to how some people may believe that, addressing the identity is a barrier or possibly a distraction from the experience of wholeness? Would you mind going into that?
I can start, and then I want to welcome in more people to contribute to this. I mean,
Sure.
Robert Frost said the only way out is through. There's no shortcuts to this. The reality is, if someone comes to you and says, like, I'm feeling this pain, this isolation, this shame, this trauma based on identity, going to a place of, oh, but we're all one, is just not kind, it's not compassionate, and it shows a lack of respect for, if we really are all one, then essential to loving that is embracing the very lived difficulty that so many of us experience, and being able to say, and bow down and say, like, actually, I have something to learn from you on how to deepen more into love. And I want to bring in my siblings.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting that you're asking this question. We're having this discussion, and the first question that has come up in the Q&A, which is, keep it focused on 5MEO education and not on politics. And frankly, I feel as though the person who wrote this question didn't read the description of this event, because what we're talking about here is the way in which sociopolitical structures and systems impact the psychology, healing, and well-being of individuals and communities. We're talking about intergenerational trauma caused by the perpetual violence of colonization and enslavement and genocide. And so this idea that we can separate the healing journey and separate these medicines out of the context in which we are in which we are all subject to political systems, is frankly, for me, where the problem arises, and why we have to keep having these conversations as BIPOC people in this space, because we keep being confronted with this same statement of, why are you talking about race if we're all one? Why are you talking about gender if we're all one? This is an avoidance, a defense from really looking at each person's responsibility and role in replicating said systems of oppression, and the ways in which you and I and we are all responsible for the world in which we live in, and the immense need for healing that is here, that is present because of the immense violence that is present here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Joelle, would you like to chime in at all?
Yeah. On the previous question, on the kind of in, with me, with 5MEO, in my opinion, what it allows us in terms of healing this identity-based trauma, in terms of our wholeness, is that 5MEO in its peak experience allows us to remember how whole we really are. And just as I think it was Butterfly who mentioned earlier, we are all human and we're all suffering. And those who do suffer from identity-based trauma, there is so much enmeshed in that. It is such an entangled condition that having even a momentary experience of remembering how whole we are gives us something to look forward. It gives us something to reach for, as Charlotte mentioned earlier as well. It gives us something to look, towards. And unfortunately, it does widely open up that very natural and predictable trap of, just what Charlotte was saying, because then a lot of people can say, okay, but we're all one, we figured it out. And so it's not really like that. Just like with 5-MeO DMT, it may take you right through to a blissful experience, but does that mean you've resolved every traumatized and fragmented layer of your psyche first? No, all of it will catch up in the integration process. All those demons and shadows at the gateless gate will catch up with you and be like, yo, did you not see us over here? We got some shit to deal with. And so I think the immediate desire of the ego to let go of the hassles of the human experience, to find comfort in that expanded state, is just that, systemic of an ego that seeks to remove itself from discomfort. So as long as we can remember that the human experience is here and that we're here to have a human experience, we can have a glimpse of what's on the other side, but allow that to give nutrients to the soil that we're trying to fertilize right now, not just bypassing the whole farm. Oh, that made sense. I used a lot of different metaphors.
Nah, that was fire. That was beautiful.
Thank you for that. And what it sparks for me is part of not bypassing, especially when dealing or seeking to heal identity-based trauma, is supporting people to connect to lineage and to connect to ancestry. And let's name that those of us residing in the United States on Turtle Island, whether forced or chosen, are settlers. And that's incredibly complex. So you're holding the challenge of the story of most likely coming to this country at one point for survival, and that the land was taken incredibly violently. And that's the responsibility piece we're talking about here. We can't heal without taking full responsibility, because part of wholeness and part of connection to source is understanding the truth that we're all interdependent. And so for me, part of that is claiming my ancestry as a heritage Buddhist, being able to bring that lens into spaces that I hold, and saying, like, I don't believe I can actually be free unless we are all free. And so where does that take me?
Wow. Yeah, this is like really, really powerful stuff. I'm hoping everyone's enjoying the conversation. It's a lot of juicy information, needed information being shared right now. Charlotte, please. Yes.
Like in school. I think it's also worth it to say at this point that we're getting into a conversation around ancestral healing, and given the other question that was posed in the Q&A, which I really appreciated, around these questions of like indigeneity and commodification and who's present in this space when we are doing healing work, is that at one point in time, all of our ancestors were indigenous to some place, and most were engaged in practicing an animist, or what some places would call a pagan tradition, but what were polytheistic and predominantly earth-based beliefs. Again, this spirit in the material. And something that I encourage always in the classes that I offer and the training that I do when talking about ancestral healing is that there are rich gifts in all of our lineages. And I've heard this from many, many teachers over time, this idea that there is no, really this truth, that there is no fruit when you don't have a root. And that, getting into, we could absolutely get into conversations around cultural appropriation and extractivism and all of these other really important questions. And what I encourage is this like curiosity around uncovering the gifts of your own lineage. I'm biracial of Afro-descendant and Caribbean and Germanic lineage. And I'm just as curious and interested in how my Germanic ancestry was working with entheogens as I am of my West African and Caribbean ancestry. And so it's not for me about telling people what traditions they can and cannot practice, or we can or cannot practice. These are absolutely things that we should be confronting and questioning. But it's also an invitation into reclaiming the gifts and the wholeness of.
Yes, returning the wholeness, right? Returning the wholeness. I experienced that. I would love to share really quickly because I'm feeling called to share. That's something that I had to experience on my own journey. You know, I've only been on this journey for almost 5 years, right? And along my journey, the generation above me started to drop one after another immediately. And we didn't keep track of our family tree. So as my mom, all her sisters passed away, my grandfather, it was left on me to dive into my family tree. So that's what I started to do. And, you know, along my discovery and journey, I found out that I am around 80%, my lineage is in Nigeria, the Igbo tribe. And it's been a very, very powerful journey of reconnecting back to that, you know, learning about the cosmologies and, you know, what they're into in their land. And then also I took it a step further to just learn how to speak the Igbo language as well. So that's something that it allowed me to connect deeper into my spirituality and coming back to wholeness within me. Now, the other 20% is something that I initially started to ignore because the other 20% was European lineage, right? As in like Wales, Ireland. I'm like, I don't want to recognize this. Like, you know what I'm saying? I know how I got that. I don't want to recognize it. But I can remember they appeared to me along my journey and said, hey, don't forget about this because this is also a part, we're part of you. You're a part of us. So, you know, bringing that in and also learning the lineage, specifically I've been studying in Ireland, right? It's been like really, really powerful to connect back to that. And it's been helping me along my journey as, you know, a steward of these sacred earth medicines. So thank you. I would love to hop in. We have a couple of questions, actually. I think this is like been flowing really, really well. I would love to hop into some of these questions from
These are good
our
questions
audience. It's actually blowing up the chat, which I love to see. So Antonio, I believe we kind of already answered this, but I definitely want to give this time to Antonio. So thinking about the commodification of these indigenous practices, how do you all feel about sharing space with folk who are actively participating in this? I found myself not wanting to lean into these type of psychedelic trainings because I feel as though this movement has been colonized by folk who are not indigenous. And as practicing psychotherapists, as a practicing psychotherapist, my concern is how these types of spaces could further harm us. Would anyone like to chime in on that?
I would love to speak
Joel?
a little bit on that. Yeah, you know, because it's a very, very important topic. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think one of the first things we all have to admit is there is no straight, right, correct way that anyone has figured out yet. There is so much stuff to detangle from what has happened due to colonization that to make all of this make sense, how do we make something that is beyond, something that is of spirit make sense in a capitalistic system? How do we detangle all of this? How do we introduce sustainability in a real way, not just a buzzword? You know, how do we introduce reciprocity in a real way that is, again, not just a buzzword, or just putting, you know, a Black person on your advisory board as a token, you know, in a form of tokenism? How do we make all of this work? And I think right now, the most hope we have in it is in people who are trying to get things done, people who are looking to make it happen right now. You know, it's very, very tough because due to the medicalization of psychedelics that is happening right now via the biotech and pharmaceutical industry, it has now turned a huge amount of people onto psychedelics, or turned the interest towards it where it wouldn't have normally been. And this is for reasons of healing. We started seeing negative consequences of this years ago in Peru, where ayahuasca tourism started to boom. And all of a sudden, just like with yoga, I remember when yoga started to get popular, there was doctors who were sending their patients who were recovering from spinal injuries, being like, oh, just go do some yoga, which is crazy. And so all of a sudden it was like, oh, ayahuasca hears you. Some anecdotal data got out and people are like, oh yeah, you can go down and do an ayahuasca retreat and get healed from PTSD. Except what we have to remember is that for us, healing and self-discovery and community may be separate things, but in indigenous lenses, for the most part, they are not. And so these medicines weren't used specifically for healing a condition. They were used for connecting with spirit, connecting with nature, connecting with community. And so that's when a lot of people started kind of getting harmed by experiences and trying to figure out, okay, obviously there is room for some sort of Western medicalized notion in it. Some people are going to need some sort of approach that is held by it. If my background is in, if I've grown up in the US and I've never had any glimpse of another way of thinking outside, say my family's Christian, I'm not Christian, but my family, let's say I was raised Christian, etc., and I've never had any outside experience, I'm going to need some other framework, some other lens, most likely outside of just a specific indigenous lens, for it not only to be relevant for me, but for it to work with me. And so that's where I think it's important, where just like Charlotte was saying, where everyone get in touch with their roots. It was not only, everyone has indigenous roots from somewhere. Every culture has, at some point, was indigenous to somewhere. The more we can get to understand ourselves as, sorry, I'm getting a little long-winded with this. The more we can get to understand ourselves as humanity, we can understand where these traps will come in. But it's not just that we can say, okay, colonizing is when non-indigenous people try and work with psychedelics, because that's not exactly a true statement. More so, how do we understand how to everyone bring their respective skill sets and understanding while honoring each other, while honoring the caretakers who have shepherded this work for millennia and millennia, just as Charlotte said, at great risk for a long, long time. How can this all be put together in ways that honor everyone? I don't think it's a straight kind of black and white, this and that answer. I think it's going to be very, very complex. And sorry, I just got super long-winded with that and roundabout with that.
It's so good. I was going to cut you off in a minute.
Start playing the music.
Yeah, they're
on stage.
But so we got some really powerful questions, and I think leading off of what we had just talked about, I would love to dive into these two questions really quickly so we can get to everybody else. So the other one, I hope I say that is Anna, I hope I said your name right, but the question is, how do you propose that we balance the commodification that is occurring with pharmaceutical companies and these indigenous medicines, and using this medicine as sole nutrients for this lived human reality? Who would like to hop in on this? Butterfly, Charlotte, all right.
I can start a little bit. These questions are fire. And also I feel like there's a lot of questions coming up around like the more practical aspect of like preparation, how the journey goes, and integration. So maybe after we answer like this question around commodification, then we can like get into that.
I'm sending the link for the Five platform too, which answers all those questions too.
Perfect. Amazing. Yeah, Five puts out really dope content on social as well, like little snippets about how to prepare. So I think that's really helpful. The piece that I kind of wanted to put into this is a little bit of what you were starting to get into, Joelle, of like the paradox of life. And that the reality is that we are all participating in capitalism. And if we are in this space right now, we are in some way contributing to the commodification of these traditions and these medicines, right? And so I think frequently I see this sort of narrative that is a predominantly like US-based narrative that there's just a lot of nuance to like the roles that we occupy, right? And how those roles are constantly moving and shifting as well, from being the colonized to being the neo-colonizer in other spaces. And so how we interplay with all of that. And for me, it really starts with this awareness, right? Like this ability to start to pattern recognize at a historical and systemic level, in seeing like where and how these things have been replicated and commodified, and then what our role is within the collective, in how we can use our access to resources to redistribute wealth, how we can engage in alternative economic systems within our own communities. And that all of this, for me in the psychedelic space, is very much a grassroots movement, and the idea that like we're coming from the bottom up. And so what we want to see in the world, we need to be implementing and bringing into our own practice as well. And that means about how we're relating to money and exchange and capitalism and commodification.
Okay. Wow.
And
But Butterfly, you have something?
yeah, thank you. And just adding to that, for me, what's really coming through here is right relationship, right? We can take a word like commodification. What do we do? Well, let's like dig into that, like right relationship to oneself and right relationship to community. And what are all the dynamics at play? So I'm going to offer that if one is a facilitator of 5, I understand I don't even want to get into the argument of whether or not there's like a lineage in the same way we might think of ayahuasca. What I want to highlight is the reality. We wouldn't have the synthetic without the organic. The organic exists on lands that have been stewarded for generations by a people that continue to live in poverty. And so if you're benefiting from the medicine, you've had this transcendent experience, internalized commodification is saying like, well, I'm glad I feel great about this. I feel like, things are really going to turn around for me, which is all valid. I would argue that if you want to practice decommodification and right relationship, you go a level further and you say, wait, how did this get to me? This didn't just happen. So now, how do I give back? Is it that certain communities, because they're in the desert, have a huge issue with water, for example, right? And so I just wanted to bring that into the conversation.
I love it. Thank you, Butterfly. I just wanted to kind of add one thing. Funny enough, with 5-MeO DMT, oddly, synthetic came first before Bufo started getting smoked, before we knew that it was inside the toad. And what I feel is it offers us even more of a challenge and an invitation to, I think a lot of people have used that as a reason to bypass any need to honor or respect or support said communities in the Sonoran Desert. When in reality, what I think we are witnessing is a forming of a new tradition within Indigenous communities that had been impoverished due to modernization and due to colonization. And now these communities can be afforded a revitalization and a connection to something that they can work into their culture, work into their customs. So we're seeing it happen with the Seri tribe, with the Yaqui tribe, and it's beautiful. And I think, as always, there's going to be the human egoic need to want to identify with. Of course, there was the story that Octavio was putting out years ago that this was an ancient lineage. It's not, but that's okay. It does not mean that because it is new, these people cannot be the natural caretakers, because they are. Right. They are. It is on land that they have caretook for a long time, and they are in that area because they were chased out by Spanish colonizers beforehand. And so it's just one of those things where I think we have to let go of some old ideas of what we think an Indigenous connection is, and understand that things are changing and forming every day, and something completely new and beautiful is happening. If we can just give it a look.
There's also what you're saying. Yeah, thank you so much for that. That challenging of narrative. This makes me think of the tried and true old statement that not all skin folk are kinfolk. And, you know, when we look at, for example, post-colonial Africa, in which all of the leaders, like the you know, elected leaders or put into power leaders after independence movements were Black Africans who were continuing to replicate systems of colonization that were put in place before they arrived. So I think also this, like, this is where we need to challenge a little bit the relationship to indigeneity and to like re-indigenizing ourselves in this movement. That, you know, I will sometimes hear folks be like, oh, well, I wanted, people say this, people have said this to me, they're like, oh, I wanted to work with you because you're a brown person, like you're a brown, so that makes you just like off jump more authentic. And I was like, this is still like a weirdly aggressive statement, like that there is this correlation between Black or brownness and inherent indigeneity. And like many of us have been very, very separated from those roots. And it is part of our practice to have to return as well and to challenge the internalized colonization and conditioning that has been, you know, brought into our systems over centuries.
Mhm.
Wow. Can't believe they said that to you. Right? It's pretty good, but I can though at the same time, right? Which is just crazy. And it actually brings me to a question that I think we should, you know, spend a little bit of time on, since we only really have a few more minutes. But you know, being that we're here representing the BIPOC community, Victor had submitted a question around, you know, we already just within this time we experienced that moment of aggression and bypass it, right? Which is kind of funny. So how can we create braver spaces? I like that term, butterfly, for BIPOC folks to experience these things when, you know, these beliefs and forms of aggression are rampant, as we just experienced on this live webinar, right? Especially when working with, you know, five.
And
Anybody
I
like
would
that?
say, I don't want to be the first to respond to this one, but I would just say that like it was funny, and I also had a full, like my nervous system had a full somatic response to that, right? And to like knowing that that energy was in the space. Like I literally am just rubbing a giant seed pod for the last 30 minutes because I think that people think that that saying things like this is just like, oh, I'm just expressing my opinion. And it's like, your opinion is welcome until your opinion is rooted in my oppression. And that's what that was. And if just that can impact somebody's system, imagine what generations of enslavement has done, right? So I just wanted to put that out there. I kind of highly doubt that that person is still here, but if you are, just so you know.
If you are, we invite you to take this opportunity to recognize the impact and the harm that you caused. And I'm going to challenge whoever has that mentality to own that you're not going to be free if you want to just like be co-opted by that level of supremacist thinking. And what Charlotte was saying earlier, skinfolk isn't necessary to kinfolk. To create braver spaces, it requires a lot of commitment and dedication and humility and compassion. No matter what body we're in, we've all inherited oppressive beliefs, whether it's about body size, ableism, orientation, race, whatever it may be. And so we have to own that. And that again goes to the paradox of one person can be oppressed and they can also be the oppressor. That's the reality in which we live.
Anybody else?
In terms of how to create safe space, you know, one thing I'm all about is solutions, is figuring out, okay, what do we do with this and how do we work forward from it? And I think one of the main pieces that will need to come together one, yes, it is beautiful that we have BIPOC spaces coming together, that there's so many different projects happening right now that are BIPOC run, different types of collaborations happening, but there's still going to be a separation at the end of the day if it cannot be addressed with non-BIPOC identifying people around what triggers that defensiveness, around what triggers people the need to comment something like that immediately, around, yes, I understand that this may be a little uncomfortable to speak about, and more almost normalizing it. I think the more we're able to normalize that and to get it out, hey, this may be an uncomfortable topic, but we're all here for it. I think the more that can be normalized amongst non-BIPOC communities, I think that's going to be a major, major help, because the less that people can be triggered by their own fractured, fragmented parts of their psyche that's triggered by whatever insecurity, by whatever is happening in there, the more that can be dealt with, or awareness can be brought to that, there will not be those instant reactions, those defensive reactions that make a space feel so unsafe automatically, that cause that reaction. And so I think on one side, on the BIPOC side, yes, we need more coming together, more collaboration, more safe spaces, more amazing community. And then on the other side, with non-BIPOC community, I think we need more, just as I said, just more normalizing around the triggers that come up and the defensive reactions that come up, so they can be addressed. If they're not normalized, they're all just going to keep it suppressed with feeling like, oh, I don't want to bring that up because I might think I'm racist or something like that. And so, as a mixed race person, as being, my father's an immigrant from Haiti and my mother is Irish American from New York. But I am, I'm pretty much white passing. I'm kind of racially, ambiguous, but, just seeing the reactions on both sides. Most white people that I'm communicating with at first have no idea that I am not white. And seeing the natural reactions that will come out from them if they do not have to have their defenses up, seeing what's there. There's a lot of work to be done. I think there's a lot of just normalizing their own kind of just triggers. And so I think that's where a lot of work needs to start, and how that can get done, haven't quite figured out yet.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add before we move towards closing, and clearly we're recognizing that this conversation needed more than an hour. So yeah, we will see when part 2 goes down. But for me, it's really about beginning this conversation, or showing an openness to this conversation around identity and the impact of identity-based trauma from jump. This medicine, working with these medicines, is relational. And so, I have from my intake form questions around identity and experiences with identity, and I'm also very clear and transparent in my own materials and conversations about the identities that I occupy, and how that may impact the work that's being done and the space that we're in. And so I think it really starts again from one's own exploration of this topic and comfort level in maneuvering this within yourself and then out in the world. I just did a workshop, like a miniature version of the psychedelic liberation training at Psychedelic Science, and there was this white therapist, and she stood up and sort of asked a question around this. And my co-trainer, Sarah Reed, responded with the question, well, what's your comfort level in talking about race? And the woman goes, well, and we were like, it's a 0. It's not, there's no, your whole body. And everyone laughed. Like, we were, 3 hours into the training at that point, and we had developed this space for her to be comfortable in asking that question. And it was just so funny, right? This like, yeah, I'm comfortable with this thing. And the body saying, no, you're not. And being open to that being part of your journey and part of your path. And as a practitioner, potentially needing to refer out, and as a person seeking guidance with this medicine. Somebody asked about that, like what to look for in a practitioner. I think it's like their willingness to be transparent in answering the questions that you have about their protocols, their safety plans, their own experience working with this medicine, their own experience with training and learning and what that looks like, and the transparency in sharing that. And so it all really begins from that relational space.
Powerful. Wow, it's 7:01. I mean, I feel like we can continue this conversation a lot more, and maybe we do need to set up, a part 2 to happen, because obviously this is an important topic. I would love to take a couple of minutes to thank everyone for joining us. But Joelle, I would love to pass it off to you to announce, our vision here of returning to wholeness and what we are working together to create. The 4 of us, right? It's like the Avengers. Let's get it. Put my professional.
Thank you, Quest. Yeah, thank you. Yes, so something that we are really, really happy to be speaking about and announcing is the return to wholeness, less as a retreat. As you may have heard, we had the BIPOC Return to Wholeness retreat going on, but we feel that having it just a retreat is kind of limiting it. One, we are limited to travel. The retreat, is here in Tepoztlán, but 2, it's specifically around 5-MeO DMT, where that's not just always the right medicine for everyone right at this time. And so something we all deeply believe is a collaboration and communication and community. And so as we expand this project out to the greater community, as we look to expand into different projects, workshops, local and international retreats, different types of events, free workshops, all different types of things, that is as I like brave instead of safe, Butterfly. I'm going to start using that. I really, really like that. That is organizing brave spaces for BIPOC family to get together and to grow in and to really grow as community. If any of you guys have anything else to kind of share about that, do chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I would love to chime in, really just to say that first, I appreciate the attendance of everybody that was tapping in with us. The ones that also connected and felt the same thing that we felt during that moment. So, I'm sending love to each and every one of you. And I would love to, just say that we're going to continue this dialogue in the follow-up session, right? Because obviously we need more time than just an hour, and you're going to see a lot more of that. So, I would just like to say to my team here, thank you all for dropping these seeds of knowledge and your wisdom for me as a student and a teacher, but also for the people that are in the crowd. And I would love to pass it off to really each and every one of you to chime in with a few closing remarks before we get into how people can contact us. Butterfly, would you like to go?
Sure. Just to conclude, I'm excited. This is just a spark, and like another way in which we're seeking and aspiring to unwind from hierarchy, from patriarchy, is we're saying like, we came together for this shared vision. We do not have all the answers. I love Joelle's humility in saying like, yeah, let's all figure this out together. So if this conversation has resonated with you, please reach out to us, and we'll be sharing our contact info so that this can be a collective. It can be a movement. I would get energized by the idea of like this being a session at upcoming conferences in our field. And I think that ultimately a theme that I've heard over and over is just going deeper. And we talk about that in the medicine, but really that also includes conversations. Like there's a calling for all of us to go beyond the surface. And I know it's not easy and it's uncomfortable because that's not how most of us have been educated. And I think many of us have a sense that that's really what is going to nourish us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Butterfly and Joelle and Quest, for guiding this conversation. I always enjoy talking with y'all and talking about this medicine. And just another gratitude to all of the ancestors that were in the space, the fiery ones as well, who helped to guide this conversation. And I think now is the time we're also doing little like, and here's how to find me. So yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation, to continue building this movement together, to seeing all that will be birthed from being co-conspirators and collaborators in the space. So you can find me at www.liberation.training. That's our website. We'll have our next cohort opening in the fall to start in the winter time. And yeah, you can catch me in the DMV if you are around here. I sometimes offer combo and rapé circles. And I'm taking a social media break for my mental health. So those are the places that you can currently find me.
Wow. Butterfly, would you like to share, just since you already spoke with some closing remarks, would you like to share how people can contact you as well?
Sure, absolutely. You can find me as a teacher of meditation and compassion classes with Tibet House US. Many of those offerings are online. And I can be found on Instagram at Butterfly Truth, and that's also the website domain, just butterflytruth.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Joelle, would you like to mention how people can contact you as well?
Yeah. You can find me, well, you can't really. You can find our website at tandavaretreats.com for our retreats and for everything 5-MeO DMT education and resources. It's FIVE-MEO.education. And that's the 5 platform that's got tons of free information, resources, directory to vetted integration specialists, all that fun stuff. You can connect to me directly through any of those websites. Just hit a contact and just ask for me by name. And looking forward to seeing you all out there. Looking forward to seeing you at the events. Looking forward to connecting with everybody. The notion, the idea of a gentle, soft space where we can let down our defenses and be nurturing with one another almost brings me to tears. So I look forward to seeing this all come together even more.
Oh, beautiful. And last but not least, me, right? You can contact me at Quest the Conduit. That's Instagram, and then my website, www.questtheconduit.com. So I'm based in Pittsburgh, PA. Spend a lot of my time, working with sacred cacao, men's circles, and retreats. So if you want to learn more, please reach us out of our contact, and we'll also send it out in a follow-up email to the participants that signed up for this evening. So with that being said, thank you and much love.
Thank you. See you all.
Ciao, everyone. Have a great one.